Good evening, dear participants, and good morning, our speaker, Zach. Do you hear me very well?
Hear you great.
Okay, so welcome to Professional Development Webinars for English Teachers in Kazakhstan. This is our webinar 8, and Zach is going to speak about using engaging online tools to teach pronunciation. But before I start introducing our speaker today, I have a short announcement for you. A lot of our participants have been concerned about certificates, and we were trying to do our best to organize this. And as CAST decided to issue certificates only to those who attended the webinar in person and not just watched the recording and completed the feedback form, so we are introducing today a new technique of registering participants of the webinar. So we would like to ask you to watch the webinar and register the keywords that our speaker will be using. There will be 3 keywords, one at the beginning, one at the middle, and one at the end. So make sure you hear them, write them down. At the end of the webinar, we will remind you about that. And when you will be completing the feedback form, please provide these keywords, and this will be a kind of confirmation that you have attended the webinar. Is it clear how to, so why we're using this and how to register these keywords? Actually, you will find a special place where you have to write them in the feedback form. And we are introducing this measure because last time when we sent the feedback forms, a lot of participants started completing them, just watching the video, and we are still trying to provide some quality and interaction and active participation of the participants. I hope this measure will not affect you anyway. So, now I would like to introduce our speaker. Our speaker today is Zach Patrick Riley, and he's a current language teaching studies master student at the University of Oregon and a graduate employee at Castle's Center for Applied Second Language Studies. Zach has been teaching English since 2009, both in ESL and EFL contexts. Most recently, he spent 2 years working in Brazil as a teacher and teacher trainer. Zach is CELTIA certified and is trained as a Cambridge speaking examiner. And his primary interests are in pragmatics, pronunciation, and developing learner autonomy using online tools. Welcome, Zach, and thank you so much for joining us today and agreeing to present. I will stop sharing my screen, and you're welcome to share your screen now.
Well, thank you so very much for inviting me here, Yelena. It is so wonderful to be here. And good morning to everyone in Kazakhstan, or I should say, Dobre Viche, right? Because it's good. It's
yeah.
Right. So let me just share my screen. So, as Yelena mentioned, the title of this webinar is Using Engaging Online Tools to Teach Pronunciation. First, it's good to know like the goal, where we're headed. So the goal of this webinar is to raise your awareness of free online tools for improving English pronunciation and how you can apply them to your teaching context. So by the end of the webinar, you should be able to describe the advantages and potential disadvantages of using these tools in your language teaching context, and subsequently, the best ways to utilize them. Just to give you an outline for the webinar, Yelena did a very kind introduction of myself. I'll briefly talk a little bit more about a couple things, and then we're going to discuss the shift in the learning paradigm, especially in relation to online learning. We're going to orient to the topic of pronunciation, and then we're going to discuss some example online tools to improve pronunciation. And this is specific to English pronunciation. but there are many tools for other ones as well. Then conclusion and question and answer. Just a couple things. This is kind of like hands-on, so I really want you to participate during it. Ask questions anytime you have one. You can write in the chat. You can speak up with your audio. I really believe in the co-construction of knowledge and sharing and collaboration, and I really value your perspective. So please don't hesitate. And as Elena mentioned, for the 3 words, I will just say the first word is blank, the second word is blank, and that'll be done throughout. So as Elena mentioned, I'm a current master's student in the Language Teaching Studies program. I think at a previous webinar, a guy named Christopher mentioned this program. So I just wanted to say, if you're ever interested in collaborating with this program or visiting, the website is here. We're always looking for new relationships. Same goes for Castles, where I'm a fellow, where we do lots of cutting-edge research and curriculum design. Also, if you ever have any questions about what it's like to do this CELTA, I'm happy to chat. CELTA was life-changing for me. It's a really great experience. And same with Cambridge Speaking Examiner. Happy to chat about that as well. And there's my email. You can email me anytime after the webinar with questions you have or to chat. So let's get started. During this webinar, there's going to be a few reflection questions, and these are seen on the handout. So the goal of these reflection questions is to get you thinking about the topics. So I'll ask these questions, and then you can write any of your ideas in the chat, or just take about 30 seconds to think about, your ideas about these questions. So the first 2 questions are, what is the learning paradigm? And do you see a shift in language learning? So let's see if we can.
I think you're also welcome to unmute your speakers and say, or write in the chat as you prefer.
Yeah. There's a great shift. Yep, I saw that one. Is a sample learning that you use. There is a great shift. And Yulia, is it? I would ask you, so what do you think makes it a great shift? Why do you think there's a great shift? Or anybody can answer that. The visuals and culture and media literacies. Yeah, that's exactly right. Great job, Leah. I don't know if you're not pronouncing your name correctly, but so a learning paradigm, as you mentioned, is a conceptual model or worldview or mindset that represents a way of thinking or understanding of relationships involved in the learning process. And throughout, I put citations that you can see in the references section in case you want to read these peer-reviewed journal articles. In the past, it was a transmission paradigm where the teacher had all the knowledge. So they were transmitting the knowledge they had to the students. So you had to go to class to get the knowledge. Now, due to online access, knowledge is at learners' fingertips. The teacher is more of a guide on the side. And so it's much more of a co-construction of knowledge, right? So each person has a unique thing to offer and to contribute to the classroom, and especially with online learning. Also, with a shift in the learning paradigm, I don't know if you can see it there, but in the past, there used to be a strong emphasis on only linguistic competence. So think grammar translation. Now with time, we've kind of seen that grow to all these other competencies until now we have discourse competence, strategic competence, and especially sociolinguistic competence, which a subsection of that is pragmatic competence. And as Yulia, you mentioned, it's this thing of like learning about new cultures and how you interact with people different ways depending on the context. So the next reflection, and this is, okay, so the next reflection I asked you to consider is, what are some pros and cons of online learning? Go ahead and write your answers in the chat or say them, whatever you prefer. Oh, and Savoskinia, I saw that, yeah, communicative methods, exactly. CLT, right? Much more of an emphasis on that. That's exactly right. Yeah. So, Elena, you mentioned sometimes it can be more interactive than face-to-face. Exactly. Yep. It's totally right as a pro. Access to all kinds of materials. Yep. Can you think of some example materials I would ask you? Yeah. Polina, that's a really, really good point. Okay, not all have access to online learning. It's huge. And then it perpetuates maybe, you know, a power dynamic. The cons are the overload. Yep, information overload. Yep. Saves time and money. Yep, exactly. Right? Figures seem to know how to. Yeah, these are all, yeah, wonderful. All these are wonderful ideas, and you're exactly right. So just to go a little further, so some potential issues. Perceptions of responsibility for knowledge creation varies by context. So in some contexts, you know, students want the teacher to kind of really be, you know, hands-on, guide them, and to transmit the knowledge that they have. That they're paying to learn, so they think it's a teacher's responsibility. So it's good to be mindful of that. I think, you know, someone mentioned information kind of overload. Yeah, online students sometimes face greater levels of anxiety. Maybe it's because more pressure is placed on them to kind of learn autonomously, which can be kind of scary, especially if it's not scaffolded correctly. And once again, the learning alone can be isolating, the need to connect. We are more connected and disconnected than ever before. We can talk with people around the world. We can do webinars from the United States to Kazakhstan, yet sometimes in our day-to-day interactions, you know, people feel anxiety with communicating face-to-face, or they feel alone, even though they have all these things like Facebook and Instagram. So there's this interesting dichotomy there. And then you also mentioned, yeah, language and power, society access. Those are all other great topics. Some benefits of using online tools, besides what I mentioned, so 21st century skills. So businesses these days, if you have digital literacy, you're much more attractive to potential job employers. So that's a big one. So giving presentations, marketing, digital marketing is a whole new brand. It promotes self-directed learning, which is kind of what we're talking about this one, which is a huge one, like online access. You can access all these websites on your own for free, which is really nice. Increases intercultural and pragmatic competence. So the ability to learn about cultures from around the world really makes you more of a global citizen. And students are interested in using online tools. For example, Netflix, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We're already using these tools in our free time. So now the trick is to find ways to make these tools pedagogical and interesting, and, you know, so reflection 3, we're going to move to pronunciation now. Do you consider pronunciation important to teach? Why or why not? How comfortable do you feel teaching pronunciation? And what have been some successful tools you've used to learn pronunciation? I know it's a lot of questions, so you can choose which one to answer.
Zach, can I make a comment?
Yeah.
So I think we were discussing that before the webinar, and I think its pronunciation is very important to teach. But what I have been observing with the change of the curriculum for teacher training in Kazakhstan, that it is not provided with enough and special time and enough disciplines. Because when I was studying at the beginning of 1990s, we had very strong pronunciation training, I think, in comparison with what we have now. So we had enough hours to be taught pronunciation, but now, unfortunately, I think there is only one course or maybe two, depending on the university where future teachers are trained. I don't know, dear colleagues, please make a comment about that. How is it in your university or maybe school even?
And Yelena, why do you think that it isn't as emphasized as it could be? You know, what do you think there?
Frankly speaking, I don't know the answer to this question. Maybe one of the reasons why we have less hours, because before there was 5-year training and now we have 4-year training, and also there are a lot of core courses which are not major courses. I mean, our students learn a lot history of Kazakhstan and sociology, politology, political science, a lot of things, but not some major courses that will be useful for them for their future professional development. I see some comments from other teachers too.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's really, yeah. It's important to some degree, as the main aim of communication is to understand each other. Yep, that's exactly right. And I really like where you put understand each other, right? That's the most important thing, and that's what I'll emphasize, is that comprehensibility truly is the most important thing. Not, you know, certain dialect of English, but really just, you know, are you able to understand me? Is the meaning conveyed the way, you know, I want it to be? Pronunciation is important because the better we pronounce, the better we can understand oral speech. Yeah. Listening skills and pronunciation is interdependent. That's a fantastic point. Exactly right. One of the best ways to improve pronunciation is actually to listen. And sometimes, you know, students have a difficult time. Like, why am I listening? I just want to speak. But if you remind them that by listening, you're hearing the sounds and the intonation patterns, that improves your own speech. So that's it's totally true. Great. So some other reasons why pronunciation matters. So non-native English speakers experience judgment around pronunciation all too often. So we kind of just mentioned comprehensibility. It is indeed the most crucial aspect, and we are starting to see a shift away from this kind of, you know, ideal model of English dialects. However, non-native English speakers still experience bias, you know, because of their accent or their intonation. So that's why one of the demands is high for these learners to feel more confident. And these communicative misunderstandings or biases can affect the learner's confidence and investment into learning the language. So if they feel insecure, they feel, you know, people in the United States or England are judging them negatively because the way they speak, you know, they're going to be more afraid to speak, or maybe they won't be as interested in learning English. You know, so it's really important to build these skills and to kind of in just society, you know, societally in general, to not have a one-size-fits-all approach and just kind of be more inclusive with our the way we pronounce, you know, English. And then also professional and academic reasons. So Dunn 2013 talks about this idea of communicating beautifully, which I do in quotes because beautiful is relative, but the idea of presenting yourself in an eloquent way. For example, when you're giving a business presentation, it makes the clients feel more confident or attracted to what you're trying to promote. And then academic reasons, same thing with presentations, but also a high stakes test. For example, the Cambridge tests or TOEFL, you're graded on your pronunciation, so that can help there as well. Okay, let me get this. All right. So now let's talk about some tools, right? That's the purpose of the webinar. All right, so with these tools, I encourage you to actually go to the website. If you have the downloaded handout, you can click on the link in, if it's online, or you can just type in Uglish into your web browser. And actually, just to show you how it's done, I can just go here. Well, I already have it open, but we can also just go to Google and just type Uglish, right? Just type that in. Voila. So Uglish, it's a free online tool, and I'll ask any suggestions for words. Is there any words you've learned recently you want to practice? You can just type that into the chat. To get us started, I'll just type in webinar, for instance, and it searches all these words taken from YouTube, and it goes 5 seconds to from where the word takes place. And these, as I said, these are authentic videos taken from YouTube, actual videos that are posted there, and then it just goes right there. I can go back. I can skip to the next one.
Zach, could you make the video or the audio a little bit louder of YouTube? Because we don't hear it very well, or we shouldn't hear it.
Is it, oh, can you hear it?
Yeah, now yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Again, something showed on the last webinar session was using a recording made on a mobile phone and then transferring that to your laptop to have it transcribed. So that's another option. And that's actually
So I can go to these videos. I can find one that's interesting. I can keep watching the video if I want. So I'm really seeing, these words in context, or your learners will be seeing these words in context, which is really nice. This website also gives nearby words. So kind of website, web, websites, webcast, web page, kind of words in the word family. I also really like that it gives a phonetic transcription of the word, usually in modern IPA. It also shows the syllable stress, so webinar, right? And then it gives tips to break down this word. So break down into sounds, say it out loud and exaggerate the sounds until you can consistently produce them. Webinar, right? Record yourself, look up tutorials. So you can see for your learners, they can just choose any topic they're interested in. It can be a word or it can be, a place. For example, if I typed in, let's just say Eugene, right? Eugene, Oregon, maybe. That's where I am right now. Let's see if it has anything, right? So 25 results, not as many. Right, so there's one video. Right, so I grew up in Eugene, Oregon. That's a very common phrase in English, but you're hearing these natural intonation patterns. So I think it's really, really cool. I'm a big fan of this tool, and I think learners, enjoy it as well, which is really nice. So that is that one. Let's see. Yep, and just to overview, you type 5 seconds before the word that you searched. The idea is that you see the word in an authentic context. You can rewind, pause, or skip to the next video that has the same word. A phonetic transcription of the word is provided, as are nearby words with similar sounds. What do you think? Do you like it, English?
Yeah, of course, I even played with that. And I was curious where people running some online videos about words and expressions from some films. I thought, how are they finding them?
Yeah.
Now I know the secret.
Yeah, exactly. And in show, but it can do phrases too. So it's sometimes more difficult to find longer phrases, but you know, like I grew up in, I am from blank, or what are you doing today, right? So you can search these longer phrases as well. So I encourage you to play around with it further and just think about through all this, how you can apply these tools to your context. Okay, the next tool is Voicetube, right? So if you want to go to this website, I encourage you to do that, follow along while you're watching Voicetube. Okay, so once again, you can just go to google.com, right? And just type in Voicetube. All right. So one thing I love about this website is that there are different channels. For example, BBC Learning English, TOEIC, TOEFL, business, music. So there's songs you can play around with, movie and TV series. I've designed some curriculum with the business section, so that's what I will kind of briefly discuss. So here, imagine you're a parent, you're trying to get a new job in an English-speaking country, or preparing your students for like a job interview. And even before that, you can take them through the various steps that are necessary to get a job. For example, creating a resume, cover letter, and then there's, interview tips, right? So if I have here, I can click on this thing, press play. So it keeps going on, right? But as you can see on the side, I can pause it and I can keep playing that thing over and over again to practice hearing those sounds and engaging this thing called shadowing, which is kind of paying attention to the intonation patterns, which helps you mimic those own intonation patterns, right? Oh, does someone have a comment? Oh, I just heard.
No, this is just background noise, sorry.
Okay, no worries.
This is a great tool for adult learners.
It's exactly. I really like this for adult learners, and for example, resume marketing, digital world, right? But I also like, for younger learners, if I did cartoon and animation, I haven't seen this one yet, but right, you could use these with kids, right? Too. So what's nice is that it's kind of there's stuff for everyone. So counting from 1 to 100 song, like let's try this one. Right, so I can keep playing certain numbers again. I mean, this one's going pretty fast, but you can imagine if you're doing this with, kids, like this is a very engaging tool to use with them. It's free, and then they can do it, for homework. You could even assign like, oh, for homework, please watch like this video. And for, this one's for kids, but there's also like music videos, that you can, like for adults, like jazz. There's different types of music that you can kind of pay attention to the lyrics. So it's, yeah. So I encourage you to play around with this tool. Find a channel that you really like, you're really interested in, you know, entertainment, whatever. But it's totally free. And another similar website is called English Central, which is kind of the same idea and has great videos. And once again, shadowing is replicating the prosodic patterns or intonation patterns, kind of the up and down movement of speech of a native speaker to improve their own intonation. So it's kind of this idea of mimicking can help your learners. All right, this next one is called International Dialects of English Archive, or IDEA. So let's go here. All right, I did Google search, IDEA, then I'm already here. So I can choose an accent or anywhere in the world I want to hear a dialect of English from, for instance. Let's just see. I don't know. Any ideas? Elena, where do you think we should look at
Indians. I never understand them.
India?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Asia.
All other participants, please tell us which accent.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions?
And you have Kazakhstan here.
Yeah, all right. So let's look at, there we go. Perfect.
Oh, Slava also wants to hear Indians. Okay, but let's hear Kazakhstan first.
But you can actually contribute to this. So this thing is, anyone can contribute. You can get your learners. The idea is to kind of promote this kind of global network and just kind of exposure. So this person's, they give a background of this person. So you could do this in activity like, oh, create a story and learn about this, which would help with your writing and all these other things. Yeah, history. And the first thing, everyone reads the same transcription, and then they kind of talk about themselves after that.
I don't hear it very well. What about the other participants?
You can't hear it?
I think this is a problem with Zoom. When we have a lot of participants, the sound does not work very clearly.
Yeah, no worries. But
we can check after the webinar.
Yeah, totally, exactly. Yeah, anyway, I encourage you to explore this website, right? Certain places, if you want to hear, for example, Australia, right? This one has, there's more. You want to hear North America, right? You can go Canada. Oh, let's see Canada. And I can choose, which part, Quebec. So anyway, you can get exposed to different accents around the world, and learners develop their ability to listen to and produce a specific dialect. A phonetic transcription is also provided of the text. So yeah, it's really great for listening, and you can do some cool activities with that, especially if you're preparing students to go to a certain country like they've never been to before. It can help them get used to the sounds and dialect of that place. Or I know when I was teaching preparation for the FCE, CAE courses for Cambridge, this is very useful for kind of getting them used to kind of accents from Scotland and Ireland, right? Because a lot of maybe the audio texts don't have those. So this website provides, just hearing those specific sounds that dialect has. Yelena, actually, this is one Yelena told me about. I mean, do you want to talk about this one?
I think you can talk about that one. I shared only the link, but if you make a presentation how you can use them, that would be great.
Sure, yeah, definitely. So Yelena just showed this one to me a couple weeks ago, and it's really cool. So it's called Pronounce Live. Right, so once again, I can go to Google. What I like about these tools is you can just start using them right away. Right, so I can go to exercises, right, English, introductory exercise. You try it yourself. Right, and it records me. Okay, so here we go. Hello, and welcome to Pronounce. So it gives me kind of a score out of 100. I think getting 100 is impossible, but it kind of says how, intelligible was my speech. And then I can also, I can hear someone else saying it, and I can practice saying it. I can,
hello, and welcome to Pronounce.
And I can hear my own voice. So what I really like about this one is that learners can become aware of their own speech. They can hear how they sound. And if there's a certain sound they're having difficulty with, they can practice that and just developing their awareness of their own speech. Right? So you can go to more ones. And there's different languages too. So that was English, but there's also French, Italian, German, Spanish. So that's also nice as well. So, this is just like a fun tool that learners can use outside the classroom, and just kind of like as testing themselves and motivating them. So that's that one.
I wish I had this tool in the early 90s, because what I was doing when I started studying at the university, I was using some very old tape recorder, and I was recording myself and then listening, because I wanted to hear the intonation and all those phonetic mistakes that we were asked to get rid of.
Yeah.
So now I think it is very simple, and you can use it with your smartphone or a computer. But dear participants, this app is free trial for 3 weeks, and then it's only $6 for 6 months, so $1 a month. So I think it's not very expensive. But you can try a free version during 3 weeks.
Exactly. Yep. Thank you for sharing that. And so the last tool is basically just YouTube. There are so many videos on YouTube that you can search just specific sounds, pronunciation tips. Elena once again told me about this website, right? This is pronunciation expert AJ Hodge, and he is just offering some pronunciation training techniques, kind of like we're talking about here.
The music of English. Very, very clearly. So all those little small sounds that make your accent perfect. You got to hear them first. If you can't hear them, you can't do them. That's just one of the training process. Next, a really good technique. This is a training technique again. A lot of pronunciation words, all the ones I found. It kind of teaches you, I'll show you the mouth movement, and put the tongue here and move your mouth like this. That's okay. I teach you that also. I have videos in my pronunciation course.
Anyway, so he's very entertaining. I encourage you to keep watching. This specific link is in the handout that Elena sent you. But he has other ones for like TH sounds. He even has a pronunciation webinar himself. But if I just typed in TH and TH words English, right, just into here, right, there's countless videos for practicing this sound, like in varying things like words, the diagram. So this alone, YouTube alone, if you do an EV tool, it's just wonderful. Finding about anything in English, not about pronunciation, but if you want to learn about methodology or other online tools, this is kind of epitomizes how much online access can really change learning. So I really advocate for YouTube. And once again, totally free and easy to get going. All right. I won't go over this in detail, but here are some frameworks for teaching pronunciation in the classroom. This is one from Cels Garcia, right? This is what the book looks like, right? The book is also in the references section under Cels Garcia 2008. And this one is Chun 2002. They kind of share the same thing. So, right, you kind of present, practice, produce, or you listen discrimination to the sounds, you practice, control practice of the sounds, and then you move towards kind of more communicative guided practice. So this is a very common framework for teaching pronunciation in the classroom. So I encourage you to take a further look at these. And you can also use these online videos, especially in the description analysis, listening discrimination. You can use them for really any parts, and you can have them do stuff as homework, kind of flip learning, have them listen to certain sounds at home on YouTube or watch a video, and then they practice in class, which is really great. So the final question, so the final reflection question is, how can we encourage learners to be more self-directed with their language learning? In other words, how can we encourage them to engage with tools like this, like YouTube, like Youglish, in their own time? You can feel free to write your ideas in the chat or say them. Oh, I just saw some other comments. I'm glad. Teaching. Oh, I'm glad you've been using Youglish. Great. Great. Learners, great tool for adult learners, great. Yeah, and it helps improve. Yeah, all these tools help improve learners' listening skill as well. Exactly. Yeah, sorry about the sound, but yeah, it'll help. All the more reason to check them out later. Let them see the need of it. Yeah, motivation. Yep, being a model and sharing our own listening experience. We can introduce these apps and show how fun it can be. Yeah, I mean, more than anything, right? Learning should be fun. We want to find ways to motivate learners, to get them excited to be in the classroom or to be learning a language. You know, that's really what I was talking about before, about the shift in the paradigm. It used to be kind of like, go to class, translate these things. Now it should be, it's co-creation, it's an exciting engagement with language. Then you're learning about all these places around these world and videos, you know. Yeah, outside the classroom. That's the thing. And access, it really, for me, it's really about empowering learners too, right? Getting them to take charge of their learning, showing them that they're able to like learn on their own in a way, you know, but scaffolding that, right? So they don't feel too much anxiety and, you know, doing tools, matching their interests. For sure, right? On Youglish, you can type in a place, like if I want to type in Kazakhstan or Rio de Janeiro, or a sport like baseball, football, soccer, I can find videos with that and improve my listening vocabulary that way. The same goes with, you know, Voicetube. I can search songs, channels, right? So that's exactly right. Great ideas. The last thing I'll say is, this is a quote from Holden and Sykes. Sykes also works at Castle. She's the director of the program there. And she says, the design of innovative, meaningful learning opportunities requires more than new tools or artifacts. It entails a concerted effort on the part of researchers and educators to look beyond the confines of the traditional classroom. Ultimately, the goal is to create experiences for students that do more than provide them with inert or passive knowledge about the world, right? So it's not just like using these tools and saying, here, go play with this. It'll automatically be fun. We need to teach them how to use this, you know, strengthen it, scaffold it, so they really, you know, feel comfortable and confident. And also they see the benefits of learning about new places, new cultures, songs, business, anything. And it kind of increases their intercultural competence, pragmatic competence, their sociocultural awareness. So they're more confident to succeed in an array of situations going forward. So, spasiba, thank you. I left some time at the end, about, you know, 10, 15 minutes, as long as you want, for some questions, discussion, anything you want to chat about. I'm here for that. So any question is totally open.
So you are welcome to unmute your speakers to ask a question instead of writing in the chat. It will be more interactive.
So yeah, some of the authentic materials could be demotivating. Yeah, exactly. I mean, once again, it's really about your context. You know, not all these tools are going to work for you, and it's not, you don't want to impose these tools, right? It's not just doing them for the sake of doing them. It's, you know, if they fit your context, great. If not, you know, just considering them and thinking about creative ways to use them. Right?
Zach, the problem is with poor background, with poor cultural background. Sometimes they don't understand what it relates to. So how to overcome, or shall we introduce this cultural background first before they start watching or listening to this or that?
Yeah, cultural background. So I mean, do you think, like, so that's a good question. So what are some ways we could kind of deal with that? Any ideas?
So shall we say a few words about what is it like to create interest, to motivate them, and then let them listen and watch?
Yeah, exactly, right? So yeah, it's all about scaffolding once again. So building interest in the topic, but also finding topics that are relevant to their lives, that are personal. You know, there's this term, it's only authentic if it's authenticatable to the students. Meaning what's authentic for me, maybe it's not authentic for someone else, or relevant to my life. So the idea is to find things that really benefit, you know, your students. So you're maybe not going to show job interviews to, you know, young learners, for instance, or vice versa for those videos, or, you know, sports ideas to another thing. So the idea is to find things that really speak to your learners, are comfortable for them, comfortable topics, exciting topics, but keeping that in mind. Yeah, that's a really excellent point.
Zach, will you recommend to use tape scripts before watching, while watching, or after?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Will you recommend to watch, to look at tape scripts before watching or after watching?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think how I always like to do it is kind of this idea of you know, if you do listening, for instance, you do listening for gist, which is you listen to something for the main idea, and then you do listening for detail, and then maybe you go over the script, and then you could do, you know, controlled practice where you practice like a dialogue, for instance. So I usually like to wait on the script a little bit, but once again, it depends on your learners, but at one point it is good to give them the script just so they can follow along, they can hear the sounds. But I usually like to wait at least one time to do that. To really just to not get them just paying attention to the word, but to you know, like for example, when you watch a TV show, you don't always have a script, so it's building those skills so they're more comfortable and confident to do that for those sort of contexts.
Thank you. But they might feel frustrated because, well, because of fluent speech, because of many other, well.
Yeah, they very well might feel like frustrated. So once again, for me, I mean, my undergraduate work was in psychology, and for me, there's a huge connection between language learning and psychology, and emotions, cognitions, and classroom learning. So it's always essential to pay attention to the effective filter of your students and not have it be overwhelming. And so really, if it benefits them giving the script or going more slowly, then that's what you should do. There's no one size fits all methodology, right? So it's just being attention to your learners, feeling like what works well for them, what tool works for them for pronunciation. That's what's really important. So another great point.
Yeah, this is a great point, what they're interested in and what they're prepared for. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, what they're prepared for. I think it's Vygotsky talks about the zone of proximal development, right? So you don't want to have it, be below their level or too far above their level. You want it to kind of just be like, L+1, like level +1, right? So just enough to challenge them, but not too much to overwhelm them. So it's really being aware of that balance that is so important, and that'll get them more excited. They see themselves succeeding, for example, with pronunciation and listening, and then they're more motivated to keep learning to going forward.
Thank you. The list of your resources is huge, so it will take us some time to study, and definitely we will use few of them.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I hope you enjoy them. I'm actually using many of these resources in my final master's project right now. So I've read through a lot, and these are some good ones. So I really hope you enjoy them.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So you spoke a lot about the teacher role as a scaffolder. So there are a lot of materials now online in YouTube and in Google, everywhere. And sometimes kids and even any English learners, they're trying to watch a lot of videos, try to do some exercises, but sometimes when they're doing too much and two different resources, then it makes them confused. Yeah. So do you have any ideas or advice how to prevent that?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think, going over some of these tools and how to interact with them, like in class, can be really beneficial. For example, like doing some activities with Youglish in class before you just tell them to go outside, and practice with it on their own. So kind of just have them maybe go to a computer lab or have the website on the PowerPoint or on the screen and just kind of show what it's like and just really do it together, So really make sure to present it in a very clear and, clear and scaffolded, way, taking the time for the tool. And also like asking them like which ones like they're interested in or what are like their learning goals. So really what tools you use kind of depends on the goals of their program, the individual learning goals. They don't have to use anything, any of them. I mean, all of them, they used to use a couple, right? That they really like. For example, if they just use Voicetube in their free time and they just focus on that, that's wonderful, right? So they don't feel pressure to I have to do all these, right? And constantly change a new tool. But we're just gonna, for these few weeks, we're just gonna, play around with Voicetube and find a video. Your homework is to find a video you like and talk about it, and like giving them time.
Yeah. Zach, there is a question in the chat from Yulia.
Oh, Yulia, I actually used to teach in Brazil. So I've taught in Brazil for 2.5 years total. I've been to Mexico, and Mexico is a great place, but I've taught in Brazil. But yeah, for pronunciation, fossilization, no worries. For fossilization, that's a really, really good point. I think that's why it's so important to practice some of the sounds kind of earlier on if you notice a mistake. It's really important. For example, in Brazil, a lot of learners have difficulty with ED endings. So they would say liked instead of liked. So even this would happen with advanced learners, or which is totally all right. But I would just do this thing of put your hand on your throat and teaching them the difference between voiced and voiceless sounds, and that would be really beneficial, and just really kind of developing their awareness around their own pronunciation, I think, is really important. And if you can start developing their awareness as early as possible in the learning process, that's beneficial. For example, that's why tools like Pronounce Live are so good, because learners can hear them making these sounds. And I think that's a great way to kind of prevent fossilization and help with that. But once again, it's, meaning is really kind of one of the most important things. So if you can understand what I'm saying, that's okay. So not, if you're building a fluency activity, right, you don't want to just interrupt them. But if you're doing more of an accuracy activity, it's more immediate feedback. So finding that balance, especially in relation to pronunciation, is really important.
Okay, thank you.
Hello there. Thank you so much for your answer.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for your question. Really good question.
Just wanted to add more tip, which is a language of reference while explaining some.
Yulia, I think there is some problem with the sound because we cannot hear you very well.
I was asking if Zach used their mother language as the language of instruction while teaching them pronunciation, or it was completely done in English.
Yeah, good question. So, while in Brazil, I would use, I would just really try to create an immersive environment, totally in English. And I do advocate for that in general, even though it's difficult, trying to just, using pictures and all these like creative things to help with that, and also encouraging them. It's like they don't need to understand, for example, every word in a listening text or written text, right? So if they understand the main ideas, then it builds and builds and builds. That said, personally, I think if you are in a monolingual classroom, if students are having a difficult time with a certain grammar, tense, or meaning, then yeah, you should totally just translate for a second. For example, when I was in Brazil, learners had a difficult time with the present perfect, and would I rather spend 20 minutes trying to understand it, the present perfect in English and them having a difficult time, or would them partially understand it, or maybe 5 minutes and comparing the two in their language, and then I could get to more communicative activities right away than they're practicing with that language, So that's what kind of I realized there is that normally you really want to use that language and kind of use CLT methodology. That's kind of what it focuses on. But if you think it'll benefit your learners, I personally think it's okay to do that from time to time. That said, you don't want them to be translating one to the other, so it's kind of finding that balance. Like, oh, this is what it is in English, this is what it is in Russian, for instance, right? So encouraging, reinforcing that they don't need to be perfect. It's okay to make mistakes. It's actually healthy to make mistakes. That's how they grow. Is really good, and it's good to struggle, but helping build that confidence and then once again, this is where encouraging online tools is really beneficial, because they can, if they're having difficulty with something, they can look it up online or practice those sounds online or like watch Netflix videos, and that way they build their vocabulary and get their mind thinking more in the target language like English.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Great question.
So any other questions? Well, I think it is time to finish our webinar, but if you come up with some questions, we will be providing you the feedback form, and then Zach, I will make sure you have an access to participants' questions, and if there are any, we will ask you to follow up on them. So I hope that everybody is leaving with 3 keywords. And please don't forget to provide them in the feedback form. And thank you so much for joining our webinar today, and looking forward to see you at our next webinar. And thank you so much, Zach, for making such a great presentation with so many tools. I'm sure that all of us will be very inspired to play with them and try to use them in our classroom.
Well, thank you so much again for having me here, Yelena. It was truly, truly a pleasure. Thank you so much, fellow participants, for coming and to your fantastic questions. Helps me grow, helps me think. So I really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy the tools. If you ever have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask, or about pronunciation or anything, any topic. And I hope someday to see you all in Kazakhstan. You know, I'd love to visit there someday. So.
Yes, so my colleagues at AEI, American English Institute, are working now on a very big project with Kazakhstan. So I hope soon we will have some great opportunities to bring such motivated, inspired young people and young teacher trainers like Zach.
Thank you. Yeah.
Tatiana is inviting you to come to Kasti 2018.
Oh, wow.
So, Tatiana, would you like to say a few words? When I remember that it is, I think, in June. Oh, it is June 15, 16 in Aktober. I will send you more detailed information about that. This is a big conference of English teachers in Kazakhstan, and not only in Kazakhstan.
Great. No, sounds great. Yeah, I'll keep it in mind for sure. And yeah, once again, thank you so much. Thank you for your nice words, and yeah, I really appreciate it. It's being here is always inspiring as always, and I'm just very grateful. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and we will follow up with the feedback form, and also follow up email about this webinar, and we'll make sure attach this presentation and all the materials that Zach has given us. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Have a nice evening for Kazakhstan, and have a great day to you, Zach.
Yeah, great. Sounds great. Until next time. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.